Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the latest episode of SchmoeTalks. My name is Aaron Knoll. I am your guys' host, and we are back after the ass-kicking week, both in terms of views. Thank you guys who watched. The views consecutively over all the episodes went up. We had 4 episodes back-to-back about the draft. We had a lot of special guests. We had the guys from Mount Schmoedown. We had Schmoedown draftee Jesse Swift. We had some TMG regulars come in, and John Kaiser sat down and gave a 30-minute interview in which we addressed, I think, everything we could with that team. So it was a super exciting week, kicked my ass, certainly. And so we took a week off, gave a breather, but we are back this week. And we're starting kind of a new series, we're still kind of getting into the gear of things. I'm still working with people and setting up our first interviews. And until we get there, we have to kind of find ways to fill the show in. And so I came up with the idea before we launched the show of doing kind of look back episodes, looking back and reflecting on previous seasons and kind of discussing the seasons themselves and how we got here. And it kind of happened to coincide that over the last week or two, Christian Narloff, the head of the Movie Trivia Schmoedown, has put out a lot of announcements, basically announcing the entire first month's worth of matches. And so I thought it'd be an interesting perspective to look to the future and to the past. And with me, I have 2 TMG regulars that are long-standing Schmoedown fans. Up first, he is one of my fellow weekly cohorts from our kind of hangout show After Dark, goes live every Saturday at 10 p.m. He is the man who owns the channel. He is the titular That Movie guy. Mr. Matt Beer joins us for the first time. Matt, how's it going?
Pretty good. Just hanging out. Can't wait for the show.
Absolutely. Now, this is the perfect episode to have on because, and Matt will be the first person to say it, he is that rare fan who started out big on it when it first aired and just through life has slowly regressed as time went on. So, of course, to talk about the first 2 seasons would be the perfect time to have you here for it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But I am looking to get back into it.
Absolutely. And we'll briefly go over that for a minute. I'll go ahead and drop him to the back. And then also joining me, we were looking for more people to come on this week. Like I said, especially now with the active community, it's a little harder to find people who have been around that long. And on a wing and a prayer, we got somebody in. This is his 3rd appearance on the show. He was kind enough to help me out last week, not only by himself, but he also brought his boys in for an episode. Mr. Ryan Payne joins us again this week. Ryan, how's it going?
Hey, man, I'm really good. It's been a slow day for me, so I had no problem coming out to help you. And you told me some of the topics that you were going to discuss, and I thought to myself, hey, that works for me because my show, I go over old episodes, and at the same time, it's always good to do a nice compare and contrast between the old seasons and what's in store for us for this season.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead, bring Matt in. I like this the last time we did it, so we're going to go with this format. And yeah, we're absolutely going to go ahead and get into it. So before we get into the kind of previous season reflection, we're going to go ahead and kind of do a quick roundtable bit predicting the upcoming matches. Now, I'll totally admit this isn't a completely fleshed out idea, but considering we do have a few episodes yet to go up before the season properly gets started, over the next few episodes, I might reach out and have everyone put in predictions, and maybe we'll make something out of this. Whoever gets the most correct, we'll do something with that. Or maybe it goes nowhere. We'll see. But so we're going to go ahead and do it this week. And what we're going to do is we're going to roundtable it, Ryan, then Matt, then myself. I'll present the match, and then we'll give a winner. And if you have a brief line as to why you think it, give it, and then we'll move on. All right, guys?
All righty.
Yeah, that works.
So let's go ahead and start. We have only 2 matches airing in February. This upcoming Friday, we have actually, that's incorrect. We do technically have a 3rd match that was just announced, which is the Black History Month special match that's being done specifically with Skybound. I don't know if they announced the competitors who are in that, but that airs at, I think they said 3:20 PST. So if you're around for that, or the time of being correct, go to the people who are a part of it for that. But be sure to check that out because the last one they did was super fun, and this is a Skybound event, so I'm sure they're going to put their all into this and make sure it leaves a great mark, a great impression, and some great trivia. But with that said, the first official match is the Throwdown event for the month of February, and we'll start with the undercard. We have the Star Wars #1 Contenders match. Laura Kelly takes on Molly Damon. Ryan, I go to you first. Who wins?
I'm literally torn on this one, but given her track record, I'm going with Laura Kelly.
All right, Matt, who do you think?
I'm also torn on this, but I'm also going to go Laura.
All right. I'm kind of in the same boat. I think, honestly, both these first two matches are a bit of a 50-50 toss-up. But I'll keep the line. You know, we win together, we lose together on the first one. I'll go with Laura Kelly.
And I'm going to agree with you. This is a toss-up. It's a toss-up, honestly. I mean, like I said, I'm going with the track record. Laura barely misses questions in most of her. If you just look at the singles matches she's done, I mean, she nearly went perfect against Demolanta. I think she did. She only missed maybe she didn't miss much questions, but she just didn't score enough. She didn't score enough points against Alex, and she only missed one question against Ace. And then, of course, in the match against Sullivan, she didn't miss anything either. So it was just more of Laura has more of the track record. While Molly, she was new last year, but still she can definitely improve. Like, I'm not going to say that. I mean, this one, the pressure is going to be on Molly, and that's an understatement.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and move on. Second match, around the horn. This one has a little more to it, but we'll keep it brief as possible. We have the Inner Geekdom title. Chandru Dandapani, the first person to defend since Jason Inman looks to become the first person to defend twice versus former champ Mara Kanopik. Ryan, up to you. Who's winning?
Putting the character aside, trivia knowledge. My heart is for Mara. My brain is for Chandru. I had to make a choice. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to go with my heart on this one. I'm going to go with Mara.
Mara. All right. Matt, who do you think? Mara or Chandru?
So if I'm not mistaken, I believe Mara hasn't competed in quite a while.
Since season 6. Since season 6, yeah.
So based on the past, where Dan, he had a break too, went up against Guy, didn't look great. I see a similar thing to where I think it's not going to be a blowout. It'll be a close game, but I think there's going to be a little rust. I got to go Chandru.
All right. I'm kind of in the same ballpark. As somebody who, especially because he was, the first full-on guest on the show, I have a soft spot for Kaiser. But Chandru's a prick, but I really think he's got the skill. If again, kind of like with the other one, if Mara beats him, it's not going to be shocking. But I'm going to go with Chandru just because I think he wants that recognition, and I think this will be the first way he'll get to be considered the best.
He clearly does. I mean, it's the only reason why his attitude changed. He ever since he won against Hannah, his attitude changed, and you saw it during his match against Smets. You saw it in the build-up between him and Chance, and you even saw it at the SchmoeTalks Awards. Like he wants to be recognized, and to me, I think that's gonna be his handicap. It may not affect him in his match against Mara, but it's gonna affect him down the road. And Matt is right. Mara, it's been since season 5 since she's competed, but I think there is. I mean, you were right. It will be a close game. The only slight difference between her and Dan split up was that Mara was already she came into the Inner Geekdom when it was really changing itself up. Like it was evolving into the tournament phase. So to her, it's nothing new with the format. The big thing is how she's going to adjust with the digital format having to do with especially in a digital championship match.
Right.
Yeah. So up to the next one. These are some of the newer ones, some rookies, some smaller players. Let's run through these. Up first, a hard one for me personally, because I had the pleasure of having both of them on before they got drafted together. But the first match of the season is Amaru Moses versus Jesse Swift in the Inner Geekdom. Ryan, who's your winner?
No contest. It's Amaru. I mean, he'll chide me for his name later.
Fair enough. Matt, go ahead.
So, don't know much about them as far as their, how good they are at trivia. But just with me being, around when he's did matches for us on a Battleground, I'm going to go with Amaru because just sitting there, you could tell he had a lot of the knowledge. I obviously they're both good, but got to go Amaru.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, a bit of a hard one for me. I have a lot of love for both of these guys. Both of them at some point will be coming back on the show. I know that for a fact. I think I got to go with Amaru. Just because I think it'll be a good match because I think Jesse knows and wants to really prove himself. But I think Amaru has the online playing experience at a top level. For those of you who are interested in seeing that, they're going up a little rough because that's called deadlines. But over on TMG Trivia, we have our tournament going up, and needless to say, Amaru did very well. I'll say that much. So check that out. Next one, we have our first regular Star Wars match of the season, Marie Wilson versus Sean Sullivan. Ryan, go ahead. Who's the winner?
I got to go with Sean on this one because he has the more experience in this format.
And Matt?
I'm going to be with Ryan here. I got to go Sean.
Yep. And I'm going to kind of keep the same rhythm. Marie is one of the 3 Dragon Con players. There's a lot of hype behind them. But as someone who knows very little about the format, it doesn't convince me that you can transfer formats and play. We've seen gameplay hit players harder than the trivia knowledge. Jim Vejvoda is a great example. So again, I got to go with Sean just because he's played 2 games. He's won a game. That's more experience than she has. The next one up, then we have 2 1-on-1 singles players going for that second win. Vinnie Mancuso versus Marisol Mckee. Ryan, who's the winner?
I know what part of me wants to say Marisol because she put out a great performance, and we didn't get to see much of Vinnie because both of them had a very don't want to drag this out.
It was a quick season for the both of them. Your point is correct. Yeah, it was a quick season.
But even then, they did great in their run singles tournament. I will go with Marisol because she looks like the more I won't say cutthroat, but she's the more lethal, I will say, between the 2.
All right, Matt?
I'm going to also go Marisol.
All right. I'm gonna go on the opposite side. I'm gonna go with Vinnie just because I think he was underrated last season. And I remember, Matt, you were there. We had Frank Janish on for an episode of After Dark. And I think almost unanimously, everybody said Sabrina would beat Vinnie. And I was the one person who said, no, Vinnie's got the stats to back him on this one. And I was right. So I'm going to back him again. Nothing against Marisol. I got a lot of love for Adam. He's been on After Dark a number of times. But got to go against him a little bit on this one. So up next, we have the next big match. The number 1 contenders match to go against that man, Adam Collins. We have Dan Morrow versus Jeff Snyder, a match that's like 7 years in the making at this point. Ryan, who's the winner?
This is the one that hurts the most. I want Dan to come back as the hungry Dan as he was, but I think Jeff Snyder, he's coming in. Even though he's coming in more humble this season, that doesn't stall. It doesn't take the fire out of him. So I am going to go against my gut, and I'm going with Snyder.
All right, Matt.
I'm going to go with the GOAT here. I got Dan.
All right. And yeah, Snyder played really, really well last season, but I'm going to go with Dan just because Snyder has an intense history of crapping the bed with singles opportunities. And essentially it comes down to I'm going to have to see him win to no longer believe that's a thing. Moving on, we have an Inner Geekdom, Saul versus John Humphrey of the Real Rejects. Ryan, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Actually, you know what? I'm actually going to go with Saul on this one. Okay. He didn't get the opportunity. He may not got a chance to show what he's got, but I think he's going to be a lot more what's the word? Well, he's got something to prove, and I'm going to go with that. Fair
enough. Matt?
Got to go with my buddy old pal, John.
John. Yeah, I want to go with John because that's the more entertaining option for sure. But I'm going to go with Saul just because if I remember correctly, his one loss last year was a better performance than both of John, his win and his loss. Yeah. So I'm going to give it. But again, with the little experience both of them have, that is a coin flip. So next we move on to an actual coin flip. Two total rookies that literally no one knows anything about. We have Brother Lomas taking on Frankie Alvarez in singles. Ryan, flip the coin first. Who wins?
I'm going with Frankie. I think Lomas has been given too much hype, and if I'm proven wrong, I'm proven wrong.
All right, Matt.
I have no idea who these people are. I'm going by name and descent, so I'm going to go with Brother on this one.
Trust me, you're not the only one. Most of us don't know who they are.
Most of us. No, this is a real who. Yeah. I'm gonna place the bet on Brother Lomas. I feel like off of what little I know about them, Frankie Alvarez is probably a safer bet. But consider it like it's a thing of like you've done such a good job of trying to establish the character that I just want to know you can play. So I'm going to put the bet on you and hope it works out, because if it doesn't, that's a crash and burn. Moving on, we have two kind of unlucky singles players taking each other. Chance Ellison versus Brendan Meyer. Ryan, who's up first? Go ahead.
I'm going with Chance on this one. Chance has been incredibly impressive no matter how many times he's played. He's always just had the unlucky 5-pointers, that's all. But even then, he's able to pull out very well with corruption. So I'm going to go with Chance. No disrespect to the kid, but I think Chance, he's got that chip on his shoulder he wants to get off.
Absolutely. Matt?
I'm also going to go Chance.
And yeah, this one's a coin flip for me. I like Brendan. Nobody wants to see the kid lose, but it's kind of brothers in arms things. I got a lot of love for Chance. I've known him for a long time. I back him through every situation. I mean, quite literally, I think I remember being at the Orlando show, and I was the only person in that front row who was actually backing corruption, simply because I knew him. That's all it was. So let's move on. You got an Intergeekdom matchup next on the docket. Brandon Hanna takes on Eric Zipper, talking about players with something to prove. Ryan, you're up first. Who do you think has it?
Despite his accuracy, I'm going against Hanna. I'm going for Zipper. Zipper has been that guy, no matter what division he's played in, he's always trying to score go to the top. And that's what I'm going to. Some of my friends have said this season could be Zipper's year. And the arguments they've told me, I'm inclined to agree with them as well.
That's fair. Matt, what are your thoughts?
So this is a tough one to go with, but Hanna has been on the channel once, but Eric Zipper has been on a few times. I'm going Eric because of that.
Oh, the stats to back up the answer. I love it. This is a bit of a tough one. I'm gonna go the opposite actually. Again, I'm gonna go with Brandon. Only because I think at some point the accuracy thing does have to pay off, and I think your friends could be right in that Eric Zipper can have a good year. I think he's a better singles player than he is an IG player, so I think that could be where the year comes from him. But this match is IG, so we'll see what happens. So I'll place the bet on Brandon. We move on to another coin flip one, and Ryan, if you happen to know this gentleman's actual name, please go ahead and correct me. We have Lacey Gillerin versus Gold Leader in a Star Wars match. I believe his name is Evan Bushkar, but
Evan Bushkar. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know. I couldn't remember for sure, but I know it came up in the Finstock episode of like, what is that guy's name? So Ryan, go ahead, flip this coin.
Yeah, I wrote most of the names down I wrote most of the draft players down. Sorry. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. You came through. So what are your thoughts on the match?
Hi.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I'm going with I'm actually going with Lacey Gellerin. She is. I mean, I don't know both. I don't know either of these, but I think I'm gonna go with her.
Okay. Matt, what do you have?
I'm gonna go Gold Leader because he's using Gold Leader in his name, and if he does not wear a Star Wars suit, then I want to change my vote.
So you reserve the right to change your vote the day of.
Yes, depending on if he wears the whole costume.
Okay. This is the first one where I actually have no stake in this. So for the gimmick, I'm actually going to flip a coin if somebody wants to call it in midair.
Alrighty. Gold Leader, tails.
Gold Leader. I don't know how much that flipped, but we're gonna just run with it and move on. All right, we'll move on to the next one. We have a singles match between Janine the Machine and Jader Paramo. Ryan, where are your heads at? Head at?
I know exactly what you're going with. It's Janine for me. Every year she's always close to having like that one match that's gonna set her to that's gonna skyrocket her to the top. But there's always like unlucky questions or just an unlucky round that throws it away. And after her victory against Warfather, I think that's could be that great momentum to propel her to have a great season. So Janine.
I forgot she played Warfather, honestly. But you're right. You're absolutely right. She is coming off a victory. Matt, what are your thoughts? I completely forgot that match happened until you said it. And I was like, oh yeah, that did happen.
That was an undercard in one of the Schmoedown pay-per-views, if I recall.
That's what it was, yeah.
I'm going to very, very slightly give it to Jader, but like by a hair.
Okay.
And he was going to be on After Dark at one point too.
This is the first time we've had people with the same letter, so now while I'm quick notes, I have to type in a second one. Okay, so I'm going to say this with a preface because we've talked about this on the show. We've talked about it when we've talked Schmoedown on After Dark. We're talking about picking winners. I'm going to place the bet on Jader because, again, Janine is coming off a win, which is great. But I need to see more to be convinced to kind of bet on her. But I say I'm betting on Jaden with the caveat of I do want her to win because she seems like an incredibly nice person. And I'd love to see her get a good run in that she's never had. But in terms of, playing for something, playing for the correctness, I think Jader's on a better note in terms of what could happen because both of them have been inconsistent. I think they're a good matchup.
Right.
So we'll go ahead and move into the next one. Ryan stepped out for a sec, but we'll catch him up once he's back on screen. We have the next full-on event. We have William is the undercard. William Bibiani versus Paul Oyama in singles. Matt, what's your thoughts?
Bibiani, Oyama, gotta go Oyama in this one. Both really good competitors, but gotta go Oyama.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of a similar situation for me. Not as well as some of the other competitors that have stepped over, but I do know Paul. He's a great guy. I wish, we'll go ahead and shift it back. Yeah, I got to go with Paul on this one, which sucks because I like both of Shazam and I want them to win, but they've lined them up against two people that I naturally want to support because I do know them on some level. So I'm not wanting them to lose. I'm going to go with Paul. Ryan, can you hear us? We're good. Okay, cool. So go ahead if you're able to. We're doing Paul Oyama versus William Bibiani. If you want to give your vote on that quickly.
Yeah, I was hoping my internet would restart before you got to this one. I'm actually going with Bibiani on this one. I like Paul. Last year he had himself a great goddamn run. I just think Bibiani, he needs. I believe Bibbs deserves, or at least he deserves another singles run to that title belt.
Yeah, absolutely. This is another one of those kind of dealer's choice situations. It's certainly difficult. We'll go ahead and we have a new order now, but we'll go ahead. We have the main event of that throwdown, Alex Damon versus Andrew DeMolanta for the Star Wars title. Now, if this is amended down the road and it does become a triple threat, I'll reach out to anyone who puts guesses in on who will win, and we'll amend it if they want to, because that obviously does change the situation. But Matt, I'll start with you. Alex or Andrew?
Two really good competitors, but I don't know, because I just haven't seen any polls or whatever. I don't know if this is going to be considered an underdog, or a shocking win or whatever. I'm going to go Andrew on this one.
All right. Ryan?
Yeah. I personally don't think it's going to be a triple threat. I think Damon wants to defend his belt more than once. And so I'm going to go with Damon on this one. I know Demolanta, he's hungry. He wants to prove something, but outside of one speed round question, Damon has not flopped. And I think now that he's more adjusted to the digital way of playing, I don't think he's going to flake. I mean, it may go to a very close match, or we might get the first time a Star Wars championship match into sudden death. But I am still going with Damon.
Yeah, I think this might be the closest match out of every single match we have to predict. I think this will be the closest. It's not as much a 50-50 flip as some of the others are, simply because, it's kind of a, as I said with the Janine Jader one, I only guess against Janine because I have to see it proved. I can't bet against Alex until somebody beats him. Nobody's beaten him. It's somebody can do it. And if anyone's got my vote of confidence, it's Andrew, but nobody's beaten him. So we'll have to see. We're almost finishing up here. We got the last few matches to run through. We got in singles, Video Drew versus Elliot Dewberry. Matt, what are the thoughts?
So this is a tough one to go with. I don't know how much better one is compared to the other, so I'm just going to go with the way that I should always do it, and that is who was on After Dark, and that was Video Drew. I got Video Drew winning.
All right, Ryan, what are your thoughts at? You're on mute.
It must be my microphone. It must be my mic. Must have did that. You have that After Dark knowledge. I'm coming in with that patron knowledge. I'm a patron of Video Drew's, and every time when she does like after hangouts, she talks Schmoedown, or there's like a quick Schmoedown mock match that happens like out of the blue. She's hungry, that's for sure. And if you got a chance to watch her match against Jen Kemp, she went perfect. She didn't miss a single question in her match. So, and also I wanted to see her versus Josh Mckee this year, but since now he's retired, that's not possible. So avenge McCuber. I'm going with Video Drew.
Fair enough. So Ryan goes with the After Dark appearance, Matt goes with the After Dark appearances. Ryan goes with the Patreonage. I'm going to go with stats. Video Drew almost beat Riley till she had a horror of a third round, but she hammered him that whole match. She went perfect against Jen, and Elliot barely beat Mckee. So I'm going to go with Video Drew on this one. The next match we have up, again, another kind of rookie flip one. We have Christy V versus Rick Radis in singles. Now, this is, again, Ryan, you may be able to correct this to me. Who is Christy V? I don't remember that name.
I don't know why they gave her that nickname. Maybe she's okay. That's Christina Vassallo. She's one of the family.
Oh, Anthony's wife, right?
Oh, I'm glad she's not here. I'm kidding. Yeah, that's Anthony's wife. She's
okay, cool.
She's Anthony's wife. Yeah.
I've never met her, but I know him, so that's why I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. So, Matt, go ahead and pick one on this coin flip.
Yeah.
I'm really glad.
Rather than a coin flip, I'm going to go by. I'm going to go Rick because I love his last name. I just like
Radis.
Radis, Cactus Radis. I got to go Rick.
All right, Ryan.
I'm going with Christina, and this is not just based off of me knowing her. I also have seen her play. She's a natural talker, so she'll be great with promos and with character. And yeah, I've seen her play, have been hosted by her in trivia matches, and have been her one-time partner. She has some great trivia knowledge, so I'm going with her.
All right. I'm also going to bet on her. I said this before, I think, when we talked about it in the video with the stars. I don't know as much about the Fan League 4 outside of Amaru because he's the only one I've been around when he's played matches. My one experience with her playing wasn't too hot, and even she admitted it on the video that it wasn't too hot an appearance on Colton's Supernova show. But again, it's kind of I back the people I know. I really like Anthony. I'm going to support. I'm going to show support. So I got her in this match. We'll go ahead. We got 3 more to go. For next up, Paul Preston versus James White in singles. 2 men who need a win. Matt, who's getting it?
Going by the After Dark standard because these are both really, really good competitors. And it's very hard to choose which one is going to win. So I'm going to go Paul.
All right, Ryan.
It's kind of been a while. I've not brought in much of my knowledge. Actually, I should have brought in when it came to talking about Zipper from my show Match Mode when we covered him. And my show also covered Paul Preston. And he also has great knowledge, great stats to his name as well. So I'm going to go with Paul in this one because not just that, but also a couple of my buddies also believe Paul Preston is going to be like, they believe season 8 he will be the comeback player. Not comeback player, the comeback player.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Paul. I think both of them want it. I think both of them have the ability to get it. I think the difference is Paul will have a new fire under him simply because part of his clear annoyance last year was the dealings with his manager. And that Chicago accent is as dead as in Chicago. So we'll go ahead and predict Paul. That was awful, by the way. I'm so sorry if I offended anyone. That was a terrible
No. I'm pretty sure Kate has heard worse when it came with people criticizing her Chicago accent character. I think she's even made jokes about it herself on SCN. So, but as long as it wasn't too mean-spirited, but even then it was still fine.
So we'll go ahead and move on. And we have finally one of the new events they're doing, the SchmoeTalks Battlefield, which is meant to be 2 main event level matches happening on the same night. First up, both singles matches. We have Liz Shannon Miller taking on John Roca. Matt, where do you think?
The Outlaw's back. Going Roca.
All right, Ryan.
You can't dodge lightning, so I'm going with Liz.
All right.
Come up with a tagline. Say something.
Oh man, I got to do something quick. Quickly.
Yeah. Quick tagline, one-line phrase. I'm
usually good at this. Why am I the one that's struggling? I don't know.
You didn't see that coming.
Roca lost to Adam. Liz is on fire. Lightning makes fire. Liz. I don't fucking know. Liz has momentum. Liz has momentum right now. I think she's got a little more momentum. I think the losses have knocked the wind out of Roca's sails. Don't think Liz is the right person for him to get him back against. And then finally we move on. Ben Bateman and Mark Riley, the final match we'll use in this predictor. Who you got?
I'm going to go Ben Bateman.
And Ryan.
I'm going with Riley. Fuck him. Fuck Bateman. I don't like the fact that he's back to the maniacal Tom Cruise, whatever he liked to do with action. No. People may love that. I don't. So I'm going with Riley. Not just character-wise, but also Riley made a turn after that Who's the Boss lost to where he did a great job in singles. And come on, I mean, if anyone who's never gonna, if there's anybody who's gonna keep playing until they're forced into a retirement match, that's Riley.
As much as this is kind of I'm making the smart bet, but I'd be cool if the other person wins. I want Riley to win. I want to see him keep doing well. I'm very curious with Bateman, though. I'm going to go with Bateman just because, this will be the first time he's talked big shop for months since he got shut out of a team's run in a title match. And this will be the first chance to see if it works. So there it is, guys. All the predictions are in. I'll go ahead and create some sort of, if this is something we do with the next couple of guests, I'll create some graphic. I'll find a way to keep track of it. And I'll come up with something. I'll come up with some sort of prize or a little gimmick or something someone can do related to the show for whoever gets the most correct. Maybe it'll be a fun little segment we can do. So that's that. So let's go ahead, guys, and get into the kind of bulk part of the back end of this episode, which is the flashback. We took a look to the future. We made those predictions. Now let's look to the past, to when the movie Trivia Schmoedown was just about a bunch of half-drunk people playing a trivia game on a couch to kill time till they could go to the Chili's. Because that's essentially what it was. So let's start about it. 2014 Season 1 was just the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament, retroactively kind of labeled Season 1. And there, so I don't know if this was added later, I believe it was, but there was a post date where they officially made JTE versus Christian Ruvalcaba, that first match, that kind of trial match they did. And they gave JTE a win for it. It is on the record. So I haven't seen that one, so I don't have thoughts on it. Honestly, I don't remember if I've ever seen it. So great way to start.
I'm going to rewatch it. I know I'm going to rewatch it down the road because I know on my show we're going to talk about JTE. He's on the schedule. But it's been a while since I've watched it. I just know a few things that JTE had himself a good solid. He was tripping a little bit. I mean, of course, that's the one match to where he messed up the dinosaur answer, the
Triceratops.
Yeah. It was one of the, at the time he was known as JTI, Josh the intern. So it was before he jumped. God, it's been a while since I've watched that match. So I really can't come up with a lot of highlights. I'll say those two: his former name and then the Triceratops.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and get into it. So seasons 1 and 2 were basically tournaments that happened a long, long time ago, which is why I decided to kind of push them into one episode. But
did Matt did
I think Aaron froze.
And it's unfortunate. He's paused at that moment where he's about to
not to get into
it. That's fine. I mean, it's clear that he was going to talk about how season 1 and 2 are lapped together. They're pretty much almost the same thing, and he's not wrong. I mean, those were just Christian just putting together his friends and just giving them movie trivia.
Yeah, it was just like, hey, let's just do this.
Yeah,
there we go. He's back. I think.
Wait, I don't see his camera move. I'm seeing him moving.
He's still frozen. Oh. But no, that that was just hey, let's just have a little tournament. Let's have fun.
Yeah, and the first round appearance he had in the tournament was pretty much, it was very separate. It was like most of the women from Schmoes versus the men from Schmoes.
Yeah, it really was. So that's what I was going to get into is, now the Schmoedown is kind of this entity that brings in people from other outlets. But all of season 1 was just people that they knew who were free to come in. So the matches were Katie Sackhoff and Kem Knapsack, Mark Riley versus Alicia Malone, Mckee versus Somerville, Ellis versus Christian Ruvalcaba, Gray Drake versus, I believe it's pronounced Naveed McEllargy, Finstock versus Tiffany Smith, JTE versus The Kid, and Christian Harloff versus Cody Hall. So yeah, basically it was just crew members, interns, buddies of theirs, whoever was free for a beer in a half hour came into play. And it was entirely uneventful. Is the truth of it. Watching, I mean, there's some interesting trivia play, and I certainly think when you watch it, you can see in some of them pieces of like when this would become a thing. They put effort into where it would go, especially like Riley, who won every match pretty handedly. But it is an interesting case of, when you watch the matches now, they have separated by themselves. It is very much a piece of a podcast, and it's weird going back and watching them when you watch it in the current climate of what the Schmoedown is. And anyone who wasn't around for those older seasons, I would recommend you guys go and watch them because it's so interesting, some of the things that you see. I do have some images for some of the later matches I'll pull up and show. I pulled highlights from them. And it's like,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's very interesting, the relaxedness of it. People are constantly laughing and giggling at the questions. I think this was a season 2 thing, but my favorite thing about it, watching it years later, and I actually realized this doing prep for Ryan's show, Mount Schmoedown, but they used Halo Reach's theme music as background music, which certainly wouldn't fly now.
Yeah, not just the Halo music, but even what happened in seasons 3 and 4, they use actual music from other shit from other movies. Actually, one thing that when my co-host and I were talking about Josh Mckee, when we talked about his match against Riley for the 2014 finals, when Riley had gotten scores and soundtracks, they actually played him scores from different movies in order for him to guess which one it was. It wasn't simply just questions. And I know that they can't do it now. They cannot do it, especially in their later formats. But it was kind of like a nice query. Like if they had decided to bring that back for one event, would anyone have loved to have seen scores and soundtracks done like that at a live event or like at a pay-per-view level event?
Yeah. So that could have been fun.
I certainly think it's an interesting angle. But yeah, it's just if you haven't seen these matches, I recommend you go back and watch them. They're a lot of fun because again, they're a part of the former Schmoes No Show. It's a 2-hour podcast where, like I said, it's essentially a way to kill 2 hours on the way to Chili's. And so everybody's drinking, everybody's having fun. It's very lighthearted. And you had which this is something we can get into, a gameplay aspect. We have the all-important betting round, in which the third round was you get one question, you can bet as many points as you'd like on it, and what happens. And and that led to some really interesting scenarios. Like when I run down the scores, if you don't know the context of some of these matches, the scores are very interesting. Like Christian beat Cody Hall 11-0. That was not the score before the betting round, but I believe Christian hit it and Cody didn't bet at all, and he lost.
Yeah.
And there's a few of those
some of the other scores you see on there, like Riley beats Alicia 10-4, or Mark beats Christian Rubikavla 4-0, and of course Knapsack beating Katie 11-2. So like those scores can tell you what are they that terrible? So it's like, no, you really have to watch those matches, understand the context of the not just of the question format, but also of pretty much what they were doing. Because everything was different.
Yeah. So before we get into some of the later matches, I want to talk about specifically, because I was even watching one before we went live. I want to talk about the context of some of the rules that they had within the game, and if we had to apply them to today's game, how would that work? Because now we have these master strategists, and there are two specific things. One of them is that betting round concept of every match has a betting round. The other was this thing they put in, which was called Ask a Schmo, where if you needed help, you would ask one of the three hosts on the table to give you a potential answer to the question, and you had to tell them whether it was right or wrong, and that would determine if you got the point. Again, crazy concepts to exist in what the modern game is. Is there a world in which either of you think that could happen? Like, if that concept came back, would it fly?
I think at this point, no, just based on how everything is. But if they would have added the Ask a Schmo thing, like when they first went to the studio, I think it was Collider Studio, I think it could have worked then. But I feel like if they were going to add it, it would either have to be like a championship, type of round, or they would have to I don't know. They would have to find some way to make it work with the standard. They would, I don't know how they would do it. Maybe it's like a sudden death thing.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I think the way that could have worked is maybe just have the Ask a Schmo for debut matches only. So people who were 0-0 coming in, or people playing the Schmoedown for the first time, especially if they were transitioning that to Collider, that could have worked. So that way, you could have had helped in matches when Jeff Snyder played against Humberto Gonzalez. Some people or people who didn't know how to play the rules, Ask a Schmo would be available as another option in round 2. I mean, send matches like seeing like Jeff Snyder versus Humberto Gonzalez, or Ashley Robinson versus Mike Kalinowski, or with some people coming in like Stuckman, or seeing Chris Stuckman or Sasha Pearl-Raver, seeing them play their matches, just their only matches. That way, the Ask a Schmo could be available to them. So then it's kind of like, oh, I don't understand. Or I know, because too many times we see in matches where people go, oh, I know this. And so then, and even if multiple choice doesn't help, Ask a Schmo can always be a great alternative. So it's kind of
True.
Kind of like what they did during their time with the season, during that first season. Like Asuka Schmo was there, but it had to be used. It was during that round only.
It wasn't
like it wasn't like, oh, even if you do know it doesn't matter, you still have to ask a Schmo.
Yeah,
that's how I think it could work in debut matches only, most likely.
No, and I think that's interesting. I certainly think there are some instances where it helped. I also think there are instances where it wouldn't have. Like Stuckman won his only match; he is 1-0. So I don't know how much that would have helped him. And I think you could have given Umberto a list of the answers to the match, and I don't know if that would have helped him do any better, because that was just an unfortunate experience for everyone involved.
But at the same time, like I said, it just goes to people who are not like it's like Christians. Like it's before Christian invites people, seeing the first trivia and having a fun time. Some are just there just for the fun, and then they're thrust into playing against people that actually treat it like a competition, which kind of may mentally throw them off. To where, that match with Humberto Gonzalez was kind of a little rough to watch, but then you see people like when JT played against Cody Miller, how that worked out for Cody. He won, and like you said, Stuckman won his match. And maybe even though with Ashley Robinson, even though she only played just 2 matches, like the Inner Geekdom division, that one Inner Geekdom match, and then the singles match, if Ashley Schmo was available, or at least, well, the IG is completely different during that time in season 3, but if Ashley Schmo was available in season 1, during that time in her debut match, possibly something like that could have been as a good confidence booster, not just for her, but for anyone else who wanted to give playing the Schmoedown a shot. And can you hear me, Aaron? I don't know if he is frozen or I'm frozen, guys, but just in case, hopefully you can still hear me. But maybe until my camera starts spinning. But other than that, I know Aaron was going to bring up a lot more points, but one thing I did love about the one thing I did see about the older season going back on it was just the betting round, which was completely like it was the ace up the sleeve. Hey Matt, unfortunately Aaron froze on us again.
Oh shoot.
I was just in the middle talking about how I thought that if Asher Schmo was used in debut matches, it would have been very beneficial to players like Stuckman, Ashley Robinson, Cody Miller, and Humberto Gonzalez in debut matches. Now, 2 of the ones I just talked about lost, and 2 of the others won, but it was just one of those situations that having an Ashka Schmo could have been like a nice icebreaker for people unfamiliar or people who just wanted to be there and play.
That is true. That would be one way they could put it in, but I mean, it'd be really difficult, I think, to put it in any other way. Like you couldn't just have it be a separate round for every match for now on. But if they would have did that in the very beginning, then maybe they could have kept it in. But yeah.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Am I back?
Yes,
yeah, you're back.
You're. I can also see you moving on the screen.
You're good. Okay. So I don't know what it's doing that still. Okay. So where I was trying to go with that was we'll go ahead and move on a little later into the tournament because that's where it starts getting interesting. One of the things that is interesting to note about that first round going forward, especially because it became a bit more of a roster, is, and I'll run through the matches briefly. Again, I recommend you guys watch them, but at this point, they're not spoilers off. But so the first round, Ken Knapsack beats Katie Sackhoff. That would go on to be Katie Sackhoff's only match. If we keep moving, Riley beats Alicia. I don't think Alicia ever plays singles again. Makuga beats Bonnie. Obviously, we know Bonnie did stick around. Ellis beats Cobster. Cobster would play a few more teams matches. He would never play singles again. Gray Drake beats Naveed McAlargy. That would be his only appearance outside of a free-for-all. Finstock beats Tiffany. She'd play one team's match and never play again. JTE beats The Kid, who I had to watch the match to find out his name is Brando. I did not know that. He's only listed as The Kid anywhere, but his name is Brando. He would never play again. And then Cody gets beat by Christian. He would play one more revered by fans singles match against Lon Harris and never play again. So it is interesting to kind of look at it in post-date and see how a lot of those people that lost really never made an attempt to come back. And so we look at that final 8 of Riley and Gray Drake, Mark Ellison, JTE, Christian Harloff and Finstock, Makuga and Knapsack, and that right there is really where kind of the league foundation kind of came from, because all of those guys would not only go on to compete when the Schmoedown evolved in season 3, and that's next episode, obviously, but they also would all come back in some form for season 2 with a teams tournament. So I think it's interesting how, in a way, it was almost like a ceremonial clearing out of that first round of, all right, these are the ones who are in it. But let's go ahead and get into the semifinals. So we do that second round. Riley beats Gray Drake. JTE beats Ellis, and we'll come back to that one in a second. Harloff beats Finstock. Makuga beats Knapsack. So we have a final 4 of JTE, Christian Harloff, Mark Riley, and Josh Makuga, but not without some controversy. So if I remember it correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if either of you remember it better, I believe the controversy was the correct answer that JTE got at the end of his match versus Ellis was whispered out loud by somebody in the studio. And so they claimed that JTE had heard the answer and then put it down and then got it. Or no, that was the next round, wasn't it? Was it? No, that was
no. I thought it was a match against the. I thought it was a match against the kid, honestly, because when I was looking at the playlist for season 1,
it is not. I watched it. It is not.
Oh, okay.
I watched that.
Then it's against Ellis. But it was It was during season 1 though. It was during season 1.
So it was against Ellis. Basically, I forget what the question was. It was something to do with Disney, and the answer was the Blue Fairy. And basically, they believed that JTE had heard the answer whispered, wrote it down, and this led to what would be, in my opinion, the instrumental moment that would go on to establish character and story in the Schmoedown, which is the Trial of Jte. And if that's not an image to give you nightmares, I don't know what is. We have
hilarious. But
we have the man before he was Gucci dressed up like Bob Ross with what looks like an Incredibles costume underneath. We have GIMP suits on everybody else in the background, and Knapsack looking like he's thinking this is just another Thursday night. And so we had, and this was the first real story thing, basically there was they made a bit out of it where, JTE was accused of cheating. Here's another image from it. We have JTE on the stand being kind of judged by Alicia Christian and guest Chris Stuckman, which that is his other contribution to the Schmoedown. He was there for that. A lot of people don't remember that, but yeah, he was there for that. And so defending JTE was
Finstock here. Yeah. Finstock himself.
And going against JTE was guest Hal Rudnick as just a spot. And yes,
that's the most. His character commitment was hilarious in that.
Yeah. So, what are your guys' thoughts on that? And obviously we know now in the Schmoedown, it's very wrestling centric. It's very stories and naturally and also manufacturally creating these storylines and concepts and things to kind of drive the direction of the league. This was really the first thing they ever did that played into it. This was the first time they went, we can get off the couch and still do something Schmoedown related. So what are your guys' thoughts on this and kind of how it developed the league?
So I actually think the trial thing was because I think they whispered Matthew Broderick or somebody.
No, that was Makuga and Christian's match, but that was brought up.
Christian kept yelling, "It's the fucking Blue Fairy" or whatever.
No, you're right.
Because it was
JTE.
Was it Pinocchio or?
No. Here's the thing.
Pinocchio or whatever.
In Makuga and Harloff's match, Christian got a question as what Disney animated movie did the Blue Fairy come from? Oh no! Yeah, and he said it. And he went with Sleeping Beauty, which he was, but it was Pinocchio. But he kept saying the Blue Fairy saying Sleeping Beauty. But the thing was, the Blue Fairy had a name along with the other fairies, and then also he also tried to reference
that match.
Yeah, it was that one.
That match really ticked him off. Yeah, because I remember watching that match, taking notes, seeing he was visibly just pissed off throughout the entire show.
The Blue Fairy sucks my balls, which is horrendous.
But then at the same time, he did turn it around in that match because he got back up. He was able to chase Makuga, even though Makuga was still ahead of him. Christian was able to get back by getting Star Wars in round 2, clearing that path. And the only thing that happened was that Mckee, he guessed Matt because the question they got was mob movies, and it was, I think, who stars in the the version of The Graduate that Matthew Broderick and Marlon Brando are in. I forgot what it's called, but
I don't know.
All it was who was Marlon Brando's co-star in this? Like, who was Marlon Brando's co-star in this 80s remake of The Graduate? And then, of course, Christian knew it. He wrote down Matthew Broderick. Josh, never seen it, just pulled something out of his ass, and that's where the whole, like, later on in his match against Riley, Christian's like saying, "Oh, I heard someone whisper Matthew Broderick right behind Mckee, and he heard it." That's where all that stuff started to come from.
Well, either way, there was a robot in JTE, and so I think them doing that is really what sent them down the path of going into the story and wrestling side of things. I think that's what really activated that feeling. Because without doing that, I don't know what other thing naturally would have happened. Like, this was very natural. This was them capitalizing on a moment and making a bit out of it on the podcast. This is a half-hour segment on their podcast. But I think it is, it was a kind of a climactic moment for them. And JTE, as we see here, was exonerated. He was cleared. He did not cheat. And he moved on in the tournament to then lose to Mark Riley, dressed as America. And obviously Christian and Mckee played, and we had that, which then leads us on to the first ever singles championship. Technically, it wasn't addressed as it then, but it is now looked at as the first ever singles championship of the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. Mark Riley versus Josh Mckee, something that would never happen in the modern Schmoedown. What are your guys? And so obviously, just kind of, I'm speeding along a little bit just for time, but Riley ends up winning, becomes the first Movie Trivia Schmoedown champion. What are you guys' thoughts on it? If you have memories of that match, what are your guys' thoughts on it?
I did cover that match for my notes, but even then, it was a very good. It was a very good competitive match. I mean, Mckee. Honestly, everyone knew that Riley was going to win, but it looked like Mckee did have an edge after that second round, especially when Riley didn't do very well in scores and soundtracks. So it really looked like it was Mckee's to win. But then, of course, the final question came. Riley was just able to get more points, bet more points, and even though they both had the same answer, Riley just had more points for the victory.
Yeah,
I still think it was a very good match.
And it was very close. 14-12 was the final score. And so that was that, right? That was now obviously post-dated. We look at it as season 1 of the Schmoedown. And that was it. And so, cut to a year later. And again, they're not conceiving the idea of a league. They're just thinking, oh, last year we did a tournament. What if we do something fun and do another tournament? And so the idea was conceived to do a teams tournament, where it would allow them to not only, create a new dynamic for the show, not just repeat what they did last year, but it would allow them more opportunity to bring in more people. Obviously, in 2014, when they were doing the tournament, Christian had just been hired at what was at the time AMC Movie Talk. By the time the tournament came around, Ellis had also been, the second tournament, Ellis had also been hired there, and Christian had been there over a year by that point. So they were definitely well ingrained and well liked and had friends at the Collider community. They had started their own podcast network, working with AfterBuzz and working with other smaller podcasts on the side, like the Top 10 show, which they created. So they had a lot more networks and connections to kind of bring in other people and really expand this. And they took advantage of that. And so we have season 2, which is an all teams tournament. And we'll go ahead and get into that. Breaking it down, the funniest thing to look at is, again, we talked about in the first season, kind of that first round was a bunch of teams of people who would drop out and never really play again. And this is kind of something similar almost in terms of not a lot of teams survived over into the teams league, which immediately picked up after. So the first round, I'll read it out here. We had Team Newbie, which was Miri Jetikin and Sasha Raver, take on Team Jedi, which was Ken Knapsack and Mike Black. We had Profiles, Alicia Malone and Scott Mantz from their podcast took on ETC, Elliot Dewberry and Ricky Hayberg. Box Office Breakdown, again from the podcast, JTE and Finstock took on Team Geek, which was Campia and Finstock from Jedi Council. The Top 10 took on Roca and Nos, took on Screen Junkies, Hal Rudnick and Mick Mundy. Team Collider, which was Schnepp and Dennis, took on SourceFed, Steve Zaragoza and Matt Lieberman. Team Champs, Mark Riley and Dan Murrell, the respective singles champ and movie fights champ at the time, took on the B Team, which was their list of interns, Christian Rubalcaba, Cody Hall, and Andres Cabrera. Guilty Movie Pleasures, the podcast at the time, Josh McCouga and Ben Bagley took on Rotten Tomatoes, Gray Drake and Matt Atchity. And the Schmoes, Harloff and Ellis, took on Nerdist, Dan Casey, and Jessica Chobot. And again, if you run through some of the scores on this first round before we get into it, it's another case of, I think this was really the exemplification of why they got rid of the betting round, because we have Newbie beat Jedi 24-0, BOB beat Geek 14-3, Collider beat SourceFed 2-0, Champs beat B Team 19-0, Guilty Movie Pleasures beat Rotten Tomato, or sorry, other way around. Tomatoes beat Pleasures 11-0, and Schmoes beat Nerdist 13-0. So a lot of betting it all and it not working. It creates a repetitiveness in the scores and a kind of refraction. But
well, yeah, looking at it from a stats perspective, that was true. But of course, kind of like before, when you just look, if you don't have that context going in, you won't understand what led to that. And most of those matches were kind of like do or dies, especially I remember from the Newbies versus Team Jedi, it was a tied game after that second round. And so both teams just had to bet it all on that one category, and Jedi was just the ones that got it right. And I would even say for Team B, even though it wasn't possible for them to beat Team Champs, they still had to risk it all in order to at least get ahead on them. Like, it's more of like, that's one thing when you look at these stats, just like at the finishing product, you need to also have the round 2 stats as well to show you what the score was before then. So then you have a before and after, like a good, nice comparison whenever you pull those records up.
No, you're right. And that's why I would definitely recommend that everyone check them out, because, again, they're segmented from the podcast, so they are entertaining episodes. It's a very fun, lighthearted environment. The first thing that stands out to me, which is one I've seen more recently, because again, when I prepped for the Matt Nost episode, was their match versus Screen Junkies, in which Nick Mundy took an 80s category and subsequently spent the round getting questions wrong and being screamed at by Hal because he openly admitted he thought they'd all be diehard questions. And it's stuff like that happening. But let's go ahead and talk about one match in particular, which I think is really, obviously, season 1, no one really, outside of like, oh, you pick your favorite person, no one really knew who was going to go where in that tournament. No one really had an idea of who would win. But here, I think we had the first ever real upset, which was when ETC beat Profiles, the literal cinema fanatic show with Scott Mantz and Alicia Malone, taking on two drunk dudes in Ricky Hayberg and Elliot Dewberry. They quite literally had 3 beers between them. If you look at the desk there, and they won. And again, that was a case of the betting round. They both got the question correct. ETC bet it all, and Profiles were trying to play it strategic and actually lost because of it.
Well, and at the same time, yes, Mantz, I mean, most of it did fall on Mantz, because even Mantz had said afterwards it was more if he just didn't understand the math of the betting round. Which, he underestimated. I won't say he underestimated ETC, but he underestimated their chances of getting it right. But even then, they still got the question wrong, and ETC did. And it's like too much was on Mantz. Like it was those one matches to where it really was theirs to win, but at the same time, Mantz wasn't really being put in control in that way.
And I think it's matches like that, and obviously it's more so all the zeros, but it's matches like that that really kind of, I think, exemplify and model why the Schmoedown went down the path it did in terms of changing its format. So one of the other kind of gimmicks, I want to take a few minutes to kind of ask you guys about this. It's another kind of gimmick that got dropped after this tournament that would be very interesting if it remained in the modern game today, which was for round twos, you'd get the category, and you'd have to pick one of your teammates to answer the questions. And they could only do it by themselves. They got one lifeline, kind of like Ask a Schmo, where you could turn to your person and get the answer from them if they knew it. This concept was dropped, and then obviously, the next match, the other person would have to do it. So let's go ahead and briefly get into it. What are your guys' thoughts on that kind of rule and concept, and would it work in the modern game? And we can make it brief if we have to keep it moving.
I think it could have worked. It would have obviously been very different than what it is today, and I think a lot of matches could have ended up being different as far as the result goes. Mm-hmm. Just especially with a lot of matches that were like a point or two difference. But it's one of those things where it's good they got rid of it, but I think they could have made it work.
Yeah,
I agree as well. I think they could have made that work as well. And I also believe that if that was still around, that could have been a difference maker in some teams' matches, like matches that were close down to the wire, or all it needed was that 1 or 2 points in order to determine the game. I mean, a part of me would have been interested to see if they had tried this out during the third season, if they had kept it over maybe just for a couple of matches, because their teams thing was only they only did 6 or 7, 8 matches for teams. If they had given that a shot, it could have been a good trial run to see if they were going to bring it on completely. Because by the time season 4 started, it had become its own little. It was officially a different era as well. But
yeah,
I also want to lean back to where I thought it could definitely work in debut matches or maybe championship matches.
True, yeah. It's certainly an interesting handicap idea. So we'll kind of rush through the rest. I'll run through the rest of the stats to kind of get to where we want to get to at the end of this. So we had the quarterfinals. Champs played top 10. Top 10 won that. Schmoes played newbies. Schmoes won that. Rotten Tomatoes played ETC. They beat them. And then Collider beat Box Office Breakdown.
No. It was Box Office Breakdown beat Collider.
That's what I said.
Yeah. You said Collider beat them, and he's gone. He knew he was wrong, so he left.
No, I think his computer is we're just going to switch the facts on you. But
right.
No, but even then, going through.
That was on me. We're having all the fun this show. So the 4 of them move on. We have the semifinals. Box Office Breakdown beat top 10. And I have the image for that. I know I have that. Box Office Breakdown beats top 10. There's an image of those 4 guys sitting at the table.
Yeah, I believe that it was recorded on the same day as well. Because Box Office Breakdown, they're wearing the same outfits they did when they beat Collider.
Oh, were they? Okay. So they're wearing those. And obviously I screen capped this image because just look at that. That's golden. And then we have
JT without that hat. I loved how their comment was JT without his hat. That's weird.
And then we have the hair metal match that was the Schmoes versus Rotten Tomatoes, and the Schmoes would go on to win that. Now, that's where it ended. Because of complications, I believe, with the podcast and the Schmoes becoming more involved with Collider, the finals didn't actually happen until season 3. However, to wrap up this episode and to wrap up the tournament, we're going to talk about that match here because this was an interesting move where you really got to see an evolution happen going into this match. So again, some things don't change. In those other matches, we saw the competitors dressed up. And in this one, they were certainly dressed up again as well. There's the money shot. I went through making sure I found a good shot. So there it is. Ellis gave us what we wanted. JTE looks like he should. Finstock doesn't have a shirt on. And Christian's dressed like someone who actually cares.
But then if you remember his promo, he just started ripping Box Office Breakdown to shreds.
Oh, he did. And this is really the great match of the tournament. Now, obviously, these are with Season 3's rules. They didn't adapt the same rules back. And again, we'll get into that more in Season 3, the changes in the rules. But they brought in, they went in, they played each other, and I have a shot from the end here. Team Schmoes win and become the first teams champs of the league, 26-23. They beat Box Office Breakdown. So kind of go ahead, just kind of recap the episode, talk about that match if you guys have any specific memories of it, and kind of talk about this teams tournament that kind of started off that league as well.
Okay, so I don't have a whole lot of memory of it. Just saying, my memory is not quite the greatest. And I have a cat currently attacking my leg, so but I do. The only thing I remember is, okay, I don't remember.
You can't forget this.
Yeah, that was the one thing I remember, but I can't remember. Was it a beatdown or was it close? Because I know it was either a
26-23. There.
Okay, so it was close.
It was close.
Yep. I knew it was either close or it was a complete blowout, but I wasn't 100% sure.
All right, and then Ryan, go ahead, man. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, other than their outfits or so, I mean, it was a very good, solid match going back. I do remember that Finstock, who was normally the guy that was able to pull out answers to really give Box Office Breakdown the edge in their match in the team tournament, he unfortunately just wasn't there. He kept missing questions left and right. JTE was pretty much the one, like, literally carrying them into the finals, and Christian and Mark were like really on point with each other. They were really showing why they were just, I mean, if you want an example of how a team works, just look at that match and see how Christian and Mark were working together. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Christian's promo earlier on comes out in that suit and he's talking like The Rock, doing his own little wrestling style promotion. I mean, his wrestling style promo to where and the line I still remember, which is, I love it. He goes, BOB stands for back off, bitch, because here comes the schmoes. Like, if you want to see Christian just give you nasty attitude, that is it.
Yeah, and I think those semifinal matches and this final were really the first steps into what the Schmoedown is now. The teams were kind of talking smack back and forth. Obviously, the finals came with a promo cut, which was inspired by the first match of Season 3 with Campia and Morrow. And so they did that with it. But and that was also the first match where we really got to see that close play end in such a way that didn't feel like a blowout. Because I'm sure something must feel like a blowout if you earn the points to keep pace and then have to bet it all to go for it and lose it. Like, that's not a great feeling. So I think this was the first time we really got to see a more fair version of the team's format.
Right.
But yeah, so obviously, to kind of wrap it up, seasons 1 and 2, they're a little more distant. They're kind of the redheaded stepchildren of the Schmoedown. If you see this and you haven't seen them, that was a little rough, but still. If you've seen this and haven't seen them, I know I spoiled the outcome of everything for you, but I do recommend you guys go check them out because, again, I think what they really bring and establish is the entertainment value. They establish the entertainment value that they would go on to really attempt to bring, that I think here comes out the most natural that it ever did, because there wasn't an extra piece attached to it of, okay, now we know what we're doing with this.
Right.
And I also think that what it did was it brought out the competitiveness, especially, when you look at that final four of that team's tournament, Roca and Nost as a team, and then Roca obviously in singles, JTE and Finstock, the Schmoes, Gray Drake and Atchie for Rotten Tomatoes. In the early seasons, these were the competitors that were gunning for the titles. And of course, Riley from the singles tournament. Yeah. These were the players that were gunning for the titles and playing really well. And it's interesting to see how in a casual game, you could start to see the competitiveness kick in within them. And it makes sense and starts to make you understand how, top 10 would go on to win. How even though they weren't BOB, they did work together to win a team's title with the Patriots. How Roca would be a singles champ. How Harloff would be a singles champ. How Riley would lose it and win it again. You see the foundations in these seasons of the differential in how well some people are playing and how well others aren't, which I think is what's really interesting. It is really a precursor to what we know the Schmoedown to be. The Schmoedown itself has had evolution, but these are kind of the fetuses of it, and it is interesting to kind of go back and watch it and just see how it's evolved from there to now, especially when you think about the fact that some of the people playing now may have been fans back then watching this, and that's really interesting to think about. But with that said, guys, that is the show. Obviously, we will have a little more in-depth nature for the later seasons because that's where they really started to bring the ability for people to discuss in-depth. But it was certainly fun to take a look back with two longtime fan members. Like I said, I haven't made my mind up permanently about anything, but I'm certainly going to keep track of the predictions, and maybe something will come of it. We'll see what happens. But I want to thank both of you guys for joining me today. Go ahead and plug yourselves, guys. Ryan, plug your show, man. It's a great show.
Yeah, as before, Aaron's been on the show. It's the YouTube channel is called Mount Schmoedown. We do career retrospective on players past and present of the Schmoedown. It doesn't matter if they were champions or if they're beloved or if they're hated. We take a look at their careers. We take a look at the impact, what they have left in the Schmoedown, and most likely what they will inspire down the road. And one thing we always try to make important on our show, it's not about records. It's about the player, not about the records. Just this past Saturday, we just did a tribute episode to the late, great John Schnepp. Rest in peace. And this upcoming Saturday, and well, pretty much following, we're going to be doing a 2-part episode on Lon Harris, the intellectual and the delinquent himself. So those are going to be 2 very fun episodes.
Lon Harris, a player whose record is not spectacular, but that match with Cody might be one of the funnest matches of all time. Such a good match. Matt, where can people find you, man? I mean, I know we're on your channel. I'll plug it anyways.
You can find me here on this channel. We have After Dark. That's coming on Saturdays. So if you're into shows where people just hang out, talk about whatever, definitely check that out. We're going to be getting into more reaction type videos too for trailers that come out. So that's going to be something to check out. And Inside the Horseshoe is going to be back. We're going to go this Thursday, but it's going to be just a little different.
Absolutely. And you guys can find me on All Things TMG. You'll see my face a lot if you check out TMG Trivia. We're currently uploading all of our Geek Tournament videos, and I helped out a lot with that, which was a lot of fun. So be sure to check that out and see the culmination reaching to our first tournament. Also, I don't know if this technically usurps Kevin, but I'm going to announce it. The first match of our upcoming new season of TM Geek. If you're watching those tournament matches, I almost half-jokingly challenged Jacob to a match since I'm 0-2 and don't honestly care. If I win, I guess I keep playing. If I lose, then I retire into the sunset on an 0-3 happy record. That'll be the first match of the season. So we originally were thinking about doing that in conjunction with the finals. We've changed our plans. That'll be the first match of the new season. More to come on that with dates in the future. But look forward to that if you really care enough. Other than that, be sure to check out everything on TMG Trivia. Be sure to check out everything here on TMG Entertainment. After Dark on Saturdays at 10. We have SchmoeTalks every Monday at 7. We have Horseshoe on Thursdays, right? I got that right?
Yeah, it's usually Thursdays.
Yeah, Horseshoes on Thursdays. And also, guys, last week, kind of a first sort of test episode went up, but Matt and Alan are looking into doing a very different type of podcast. A friendly discussion into politics, and in the world that we live in, that doesn't happen often enough. So if that's something that intrigues you, be sure to check that out as they continue to work on and develop that. With that being said, guys, that is everything for us here tonight. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe and stay up to date for more content. My name is Aaron Knoll, and thank you guys for watching.